It's not very often that you come across a visionary who defies the odds, taking matters into their own hands, redefining the status quo, and achieving success beyond expectations. Ian Fuhr has been in the game for over 40 years and has crafted a niche for building successful businesses, one of which is Sorbet Group, a company established in 2005 that has become the largest and most successful beauty and cosmetic franchise with over 220 stores across South Africa and 3,500 employees.
Okay, hi, my name is Ian Fuhr. I am, I suppose, what you would call a serial entrepreneur. I've been involved in various businesses since the age of 22, back in 1976, and I've opened a number of businesses since then. The most recent one before my current one was the Sorbet Group of beauty salons. It's become a very large chain of over 220 franchise stores throughout South Africa. I believe the purpose of business really is to focus on your customers and to make them feel good. So at Sorbet, for example, our purpose, what we call our reason for being, was to touch people's lives and to make them feel good about themselves. And that's really what the purpose of business should be. It should always be, how do you make your customers feel?
With a firm belief in putting service before profits and also in a culture-driven working atmosphere, given the race fabric of South Africa, Ian has always maintained that service through a well-structured cultural framework is key to delivering success in any given business, hence his ideology of cultureneering. So what is cultureneering?
The word cultureneering really means how to build a strong culture in a diverse workforce that will lay the platform for obsessive customer service. So building a culture in Sorbet was quite challenging, and I need to give you some context there. What happened was over the years I had always started a business and then built a culture. But because of my experience, and particularly my early experience of being involved heavily with race relations, I had developed what I called a culture framework before we even came up with the name of cultureneering. But we had like a culture framework. So when it came time to start a new business, I had previously sold a business called Supermart, which goes all the way back to Kmart in 1976. I had sold that to Edcon, and then they changed that to Jetmart. And so I was looking for something to do. And before I went and found a business, I already had my culture framework in place. I knew exactly what the culture of this business was going to look like, regardless of what industry it was in. And then it just turned out to be the beauty industry. And it took some time for us to get our first franchisee, about 4.5 years exactly. So my plan was to open 3 or 4 stores, then try and build a franchise model, and then go out and franchise. But it took me 22 stores before we got our first franchisee, and that was quite challenging. And part of that was the culture was just evolving. We didn't actually do anything specific to change the mindset. All we did was to make sure that the quality of our therapists was as good as any other therapist. So it was just about making sure that our therapists were at a standard that was, as good as anyone else, and then we grew from there. So we need cultureneering because very often culture is perceived to be something that sits on the sideline. It's an HR function, and we got to tick that box, and we say, okay, well, now we've had a bit of a culture intervention, let's tick that and move on. But culture really needs to be an integral part of your business strategy. That's really important, an integral part. It's not something that we do on the side, and it needs to be driven by the top, the CEO, the chief executives across the board in the company. Everybody needs to drive this thing, because without that, if it comes as an HR intervention, it's highly unlikely to succeed. It needs to be driven through the organization. So when people say to me, culture is just in the airy-fairy stuff, how does it impact on the bottom line? I would say that culture is the bottom line. Without it, you can never really be truly successful.
Ian Fuhr is a firm believer in the ripple effects of good management, motivating a highly trained and motivated staff with a focus on consistency of service, which leads to customer satisfaction and retention that will eventually drive uphill the financial margins of the business. And that was the advantage that set Sorbet on its way to growth and profiteering.
For me, the results showed in the quality of the service and the attitude of the people. If you had these amazing relationships that were developing and people loved what they did, then the culture was working. One of the reasons why there were no beauty salon chains in South Africa, and in fact very few in the world of any significant numbers, is because they have not really been able to create a level of consistency of service across a large number of outlets. And so that was our biggest challenge. And I think it was the culture that enabled us to achieve that. That, as I say, became our competitive advantage. So when I sold Sorbet, a lot of people would say to me, why don't you just relax now and settle down? You've done it all and you've proved this and you've proved that. I don't have that in me. I probably retired for an afternoon nap, and that was about as much as I could take. And then I decided we needed to start something again. Sorbet at the time that I left, the turnover had hit over R1 billion per annum. And so that's not really my strength. I'm not a great operator of businesses. I prefer to start them. So the Hatch Institute was a natural thing for me to start because it was taking all the things that I had learned over the years and all the experiences that I had learned and then offering that to other companies. And I hope that we'll be able to grow Hatch into a large organization. So I'm not finished yet.
Ian has big dreams and he has his work cut out for him. He knows his next step and is relishing the prospects of building and transforming yet another groundbreaking business idea.